Okay. Right, welcome to the Open Spaces meeting, 18th of July. There is initially a maximum of 10-minute forum for members of the public. Due to the fact that we're not having any members of the public here, I'll instate standing orders and we'll go straight into the agenda. So 2022-3/035, apologies for absence.
From councillors Peter Howden and Rachel Flood, both acceptable reasons.
Thank you. Okay. Point 2022-3/036, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest in relation to the localist maximums? Any agenda items?
Technically, I ought to declare an interest on 042B, which is battlefields allotments, so it's non-pecuniary.
In relation to that, if it's
Yeah, if
same
it's
for me,
yeah.
on that one.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, on to 2022-3/37. Adopt, approve as a correct record of the notes of the minutes of the council held on 20th of June 2022.
Can we do it? Because Steve wasn't here.
Yeah, I think you can, because otherwise you'd have set times when you couldn't actually agree any minutes if you had a new committee, so
Yeah, I'll propose.
I'll second.
you agree? Initial that one. Yeah, initial there, sorry. Sign and date that one. Initial report done. Initial report done. Thank you very much.
Okay, 2022-3/38, clerk's report. Receive a report from the clerk.
Okay, so the zero-turn mower is being delivered tomorrow. And the special tool we need for the roundabout, I've sent off a photograph of the roundabout, and I've asked the company that installed it if they can send us a tool. Carter's Park, there's been some issues with the slide, which everyone knows, relating to the installation. And Isabel's in contact with the supplier, as it was she who dealt with them originally, and we're all meeting on Thursday to check the progress of the installation and see what's happening. Although you've got a lot more and fill in on that.
Yeah, I mean, it literally on Thursday, it's just they're coming back Thursday to adjust the top of the mound where the slide goes in. They want us to check it to make sure we're happy with it before they bring the safety surfacing people in the next day. If we're not happy with it, then obviously the safety surfacing will be delayed. So that's what the meeting's for.
There's been some use of disposable barbecues in Carter's Park, which has damaged the grass. 3 of the new benches are in the Jubilee Garden. I sent through an email today that came in from Keep Britain Tidy, I think. It's called Love Parks Week, which is taking place, and we can just put our details on there to really advertise that we've got parks. So everyone's happy for me. And it's not an agenda item, but it's only a register online. There's been some damage to equipment, which appears to have been deliberate, with a member of the public hurt themselves. Cemeteries, there was an issue with an unauthorised vase on a grave, which has caused maintenance issues. The monumental mason has been notified and a removal request has been made. Sophie and Rick are working on the cemetery plan, Park Road. Email received reweeds on roadway and rose garden at Hallgate. The roadway was sprayed immediately following the email, and the maintenance schedule is on tonight's agenda. Allotments. As of today, we have a further 3 plots available to let at Plankhook, which are not on your list because the letter came in today. We've offered the rubbish pile to the allotment holder, but we're still waiting back a response. They need time to think about that. I've met today with the Open Spaces team to mark out former plot 1B, and we've worked it out by the adjoining plots, and we can actually get 8 plots out of that one, so that's positive. But also to note on that one, there will need to be works done and a charge made, because despite writing to the former allotment holder, nothing has been done with removing the rubbish, etc. There's only 1 rent still outstanding. The letter's been sent chasing that, and we now have the name of the farmer who's subletting allotments, so we can deal with that. Netherfield, I received a phone call from a member of the public last night asking if barbecues were allowed, and I informed them and they were. And the planters on Market Hill, we thought we'd cracked that one, and then this afternoon they came back and it's a different form we've got to fill in, so the saga continues on that one. And that's me finished. Thank you.
Just on one point on that, what piece of equipment's been damaged?
You know the one that the yellow thing, seesaw thingy?
Oh, right.
It was a couple of weeks ago now.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, I'm just
okay.
reporting it on, yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. Right, 2022-3-39, Carts Park A, to receive an update on Jubilee Garden from the Chair of the Events Committee.
Okay, well, we discussed the Jubilee Garden at our last meeting, and we worked out what else needed to be done. We have had more limestone delivered, and that has been levelled out. The electric connection needs to be done. The AstroTurf, or however we're going to finish the top of the stage area, needs to be completed, and then that is pretty much all that needs to be done. There are other bits and pieces, obviously, like the seating around the trees and that sort of thing, which we have ordered with the money that was donated. So they will just need to be decided exactly where they're going to be placed. But that will get it finished to a reasonable standard, and then it's an ongoing process of developing it, basically. So the budget was earmarked at £3,000, plus there was the £1,000 that was split 600 and 400. And currently from the £3,000 we have £744 and 33p remaining, and that's with it as it is now. So that's certainly going to be enough to finish off the electrical work and hopefully get that stage area finished off. So it depends on what else we want to add into it, whether you're going to think about doing anything more with it further down the line, whether you need to use that extra £600, or whether we utilise that for another project within the planting scheme.
Okay,
So that's where we're at the minute.
So the 400 out of the 1,000 is for what was planted in the tubs in the church?
Yes.
So the 600 left
Yes.
from that budget?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Right, B, to resolve to agree the proposal regarding the roses in Carter's Park. Sorry again.
Yeah. So the roses were all donated, as were the ones in the churchyard by Style Roses. They did at the time say that they would be happy to help out with maintenance, etc., etc. Obviously, with changes of staff, it's lapsed a bit, to be fair, because the time that was meant to be trimming them up, it didn't happen, so it's lapsed. They have offered to come in and help put them into a decent state in the winter months, and I did speak with the ground staff the other day when I saw them in the park, and we talked around it, and they were more than happy to have them come in to help, just to give them a pointer, because it's not their area of expertise.
Yeah.
So they're happy for them to come and do that. So I think if we can respond to them just saying that we would very much like their input, because once they've done that, then moving forward, that will be covered then.
Yeah, so proposal is then we go back to Star Roses and say, thank you very much, yes, we would like you to come in and give us a date that they can agree in the future, and then we can proposal? Second that? Okay, item C, it's resolved to agree to varnish picnic benches and use pellets to stop graffiti. So,
Do you want me the idea was the pellets were bought when we were going to be casting the concrete benches so that it would have colour within the concrete. Obviously they were bought by Rick. We've still got them, but obviously we're not now going to cast the concrete benches, and the suggestion was made that could we do something with the tops of the existing benches now, and either varnish them and then put the coloured pellets in and seal them, just to make them look a bit more interesting. The only problem that I can see with that is because they're slatted, I'm not entirely sure how successful it would be, and we're likely to need to replace the tops at some point. So do we hang on to the pellets and then cast concrete tops for them later on, or do we have a trial and see how it works?
I think if you're going to put pellets on top, I think you're going to have to be looking down the road of like epoxy resin.
Yeah, which is going to be difficult because then you've got to shutter it all, haven't you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's doable. There's no problem trialing it, you know. But it's how you're going to go down that road of doing it. That's the only problem. Varnishing it, I think, yeah, it's a good idea. It's going to put a finish on it that's going to stop some graffiti. So, personally, I think varnishing is not a problem. I think the pellets maybe, if there's a way we can do it and shutter it so that, you know, even if you're putting, the problem you've got is once you've set the epoxy resin on it, is getting the shuttering back out. Steve, any thoughts?
Not really, not now. How
Pellets-
am I going to shut the area off? To do any work on that? You know, the resin will take probably a good day, I would have thought, to set.
Yeah.
How are you going to sort of stop anyone?
You're not.
You're not, are you?
No.
The only way you could do that is to do it on one of the existing tops of the remaining benches, and do it in the traveller shed, and then bring it over and swap them out as you've done it. You know, but again, it's the problem is
Are they strong enough to take the weight, the actual frame of the benches, to take the weight of the resin on top of it?
yeah.
They are they?
Yeah, the resin wouldn't be overly. I don't know whether they would be strong enough to take a concrete top, a full concrete top. I don't know. But in relation to from a resin perspective, I think you'd get away with that. But then again, they're currently slatted. Maybe it's worth infilling the slats, shuttering around the outside, and then putting a skim of epoxy on with some pellets in. It's worth a look at. It gives you a solid top instead of a slat one.
We need to look at how much it would cost to do it, because if you're talking about epoxy resin, then it's quite expensive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How many benches are there?
There's 4 in there.
I think there's
Still
13 in total.
There's 13 in total, yeah. But whether we'd need to, I don't think we'd bother doing all of them, to be fair. I think is it doable? Which it is doable, but it's going to be quite a long-winded process. And is it cost effective? Are we better just to leave them as is for now and look at how we replace the tops as they get damaged, because we could look at all sorts of different variations then. You could probably buy pre-done plastic, resin, whatever, tops ready to go. I don't know what the cost would be.
I think in the interim, I think varnishing them is a good idea because you're going to protect them a little bit further. It's going to make them last longer. A coat of varnish isn't going to help, and it's going to make them look more presentable anyway. And I think we could do with then going back and costing out what sort of tops we could do with that. Would that be, you know, precast plastic tops or wooded ones with, or even concrete.
So from that conversation, I would suggest that if on one of the older tops that is not particularly good,
Okay.
Rick wanted to do a trial just to see how it would work with the idea that he got in his head, and then we'll be able to understand whether it's a viable option,
Yeah, makes sense.
rather than not doing it and then wishing that we had done it. At least if we try it on something that's not really going to matter, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you're not wasted all your time and effort trying to do something that is not going to be effective, and then we can look at the costs further down the line of what we need to do.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to do. I mean, the cost of epoxy resin as a trial isn't going to be a vast amount.
No.
Um,
You can just do a small section.
Yeah, and if we've already got the pellets, same thing. Proposal going forward then is that we do a trial on one of the benches, one of the bench tops or one of the tabletops, and see how it goes, basically, and then bring it back at a later meeting. Yeah, right, sir? Yeah, that's what's happening. Agreed. Okay. Point D, to resolve to agree the situation with the hedge by the doctor's surgery. I'm presuming this is from the email that came in. Yeah. So, hedges growing through the railings, making it difficult for them to get down. Does that fall into DEFRA so we can't do it currently? Yeah.
I would suggest so. I mean, it's not a health and safety issue from their point of view. If it were and the public were accessing down there, then that'd be a different thing altogether. But it's not.
Yeah.
So I think it's got to wait until after DEFRA. Then you've got to look at, I know historically it has been done, but we have been very clear with other people that have asked, about overhanging trees or hedges or whatever. Our response has always been to them that our staff can't go on their property to cut back because then we're not insured on their property.
Right.
So do we follow that same pattern or do we treat them differently? That's the difficulty we've got, because we've had two instances. Obviously one was down at Fish Pond, where we had somebody that was complaining about things from our side overhanging their side, and they wanted us to go into their garden to cut it back.
Yep.
And we told them no, we couldn't. And then we've also had a situation with a hedge and a tree butting into next to the cemetery in Park Road. And again, when we met with them, we said that we could cut anything that was overhanging our way that was from their side and do that, but we couldn't go onto their property to cut it back. So it's a tricky one.
Okay, so if I can pass over to Sophie in relation to the health and safety side from a staffing perspective, where do you see yourself on this in relation to that? Because obviously we can't be putting a staff there that's not going to cover our job.
No, so from our point of view, when we've checked with other situations, our members of staff are only insured when they're on our property. So they wouldn't be insured to go on somebody else's property.
Okay.
So that's
So
the situation.
Great, thanks for that. So in that sense then, if we go back to them and say that they are well within their rights to trim it back at any point they see fit, but unless there's going to be some sort of coverage for us that we can't go and do it. Yeah. And then if they want to get somebody in to do it, they can get somebody in to do it.
I think the difficulty would be that if we did it for them and then somebody else found out what we'd done, then we're going to be on a very sticky wicket moving forward. Because then you're going to get all and sundry, you're going to say, oh, but your hedge is growing into our area or whatever, and it's a tricky one.
The only concern on that one necessarily is the hedge is not a problem because anyone could cut the hedge back. That's not an issue. Is there the tree that's overhanging? Again, is that something? How does that relate to us?
I haven't been to have a proper look, to be fair. I'm not entirely sure which tree they're referring
In
to.
Park Road.
Yeah.
Road too.
Yeah, the one in Park Road belongs to Bungalow and overhangs our land on one side. And we've asked the owners of the bungalow to clarify they're happy for us to cut it back, and we don't get any response back. So it's sort of, it's where it is.
The park bungalow.
Park Road.
Park.
Is that one you're referring to?
I don't know.
Oh.
No. I mean, was the in the email? I can't.
I'm just
I
trying
read
to
it
pull it up.
recently. If they mentioned a tree as well that was overhanging, then again we need to be sure which tree they're referring to. And if we can work on it from our side, then that's not an issue.
Yeah.
But we can't go onto their property to do it.
Yeah, the tree overhangs the car park at the rear of the building and deposits. Deposits are left on cars from birds and tree sap. We're also concerned that it may be close enough for schools to gain access to the roof space. So there's no picture of that, there's no picture of the hedge. So that's what I'm just clarifying which
I
it
think
is.
it's more important to look at the tree.
Yep.
And if we can work on that from our side and do any trimming back that's necessary, then absolutely, not a problem. Without going down and having a look, I'm not entirely sure which tree they're referring to.
Okay.
And it may be that it's not within the bounds of park.
Okay.
It may be within the bounds of the bungalow, but I don't know without looking.
No worries. Okay, as a proposal going forward then, if we go back in relation to the hedge and say that our staff can't cut that because it's on their property, and in relation to the tree, like I say, I'm finished work on Wednesday, so I can go down there on Thursday and have a sort of like gander at the tree, not a problem. And then if we can cut it back from our side, if we can sort of like pencil that in on the work schedule so that we can do it early in the morning when there's no cars in there. And then at least that way it gets it done from our side and we're covered on the insurance.
Do we have to wait for DEFRA?
If it's a health and safety, no you don't. So if it's overhanging and impacting on their people
Roof
coming, yeah, maybe, if it's getting very low and it's impacting on them when they're parking or whatever, then it can be done.
Okay. Again, until we go down
But
there and really
it's-
have a look, we don't cut
yeah,
over the
no.
nose. So we got the proposal down, John?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll propose that. Second. Agreed.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, point E, to resolve to agree and give permission to SHDC Communities team to place a banner on the railings of Carts Park at the Boston Road entrance and the Park Road entrance. So this is in relation to Activate, I believe, is that right? Yeah. Is everyone?
Those.
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah, agreed. And on just on that point, I know we just agreed it, just for clarity, if we get something like that in the future and the time scales are quite tight, is it something that sort of a thing we can agree via email within the open spaces committee necessarily. I mean, it's like you said about the Love Parks. It's only something very.
The Love Park's putting something on the internet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Registering something, but this is actually fixing something to the railings of the park.
Yeah.
And realistically, they should have asked for it when they sent the original documentation through in May. So
Yeah.
the delay wasn't out.
I'm not suggesting this fault to be proportionate. I just mean, is it something that we can discuss via email as opposed to?
There's no record
You know.
of it then.
I think the thing would be if any group that's wanting to use it, if they put their full proposal to us at the beginning,
Yeah.
if that includes some sort of advertising banner or whatever, then it's easy, then it's agreed, and
Yeah.
then we don't have to revisit it.
No.
So if we go back to them and say, you know, for future reference, if you
Yeah.
put that in your proposal,
Yeah.
then it can all be done in one thing. You don't have to come back to us anymore.
Yeah, cool, no problem.
Yeah.
Right,
Isn't anything from it.
nothing further fields? Okay. Cemeteries. 2022 3-41.8 to receive a report from the meeting with the church.
Do you want me to read out the...
Yeah, I believe the vicar emailed across, didn't she?
Yeah, she did this. I had to alter about the one thing that she didn't get right, but that's
Okay.
fine. Parish Council will identify 2 to 3 dates a year for general tidy up, week, etc., above and beyond normal weekly maintenance of the churchyard. Once the dates have been identified, we will encourage members of the congregation, and it could be opened to wider volunteers within the town. This would be led by the Parish Council as we work together to keep the special place that is All Saints Churchyard. Shireen and the PCC representative will meet with members of the Parish Council Open Spaces Committee every 6 months to discuss any up and coming events, any particular issues, and to encourage good communication and collaboration. Happy to work with the junior choir on exploring the Eco Church and God's Acre possibilities for developing the churchyard as a place of quiet rest and encouraging biodiversity. Whilst there is no set time or date for those who trim and mow the grass, if at all possible, 9:30 to 10 on a Wednesday morning will be avoided due to the service that takes place each week. And we can liaise, myself and Kaz will liaise with each other in order to, if there's anything big going on at the church around it, and our guys know now not to go there. And then there's just details of Eco Church and God's Acre, and some links that are there. That's what came out of that meeting.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a very positive meeting. Wonderful, thank you for that. B, to resolve to agree the future plans for the closed churchyard. I know the future plans do come into more planting up and the general maintenance of. One thing I was aware of last time I went, there is quite an overhanging tree right next to the end of the church, which I think from a health from a damage to property perspective, if you know the one I mean.
Right at the end.
Yeah. Over the main area.
Oh, that one. Oh,
Yeah.
there's another one as well. Then.
Yeah, so where there's a group of about 3 or 4 tubs
Yes.
by
There.
the old bank buildings.
Right. Okay.
That tree there.
Yeah,
is
and
quite
then there's the
a-
other one at the other end near the bit that we thought was LCC,
Yeah,
which they did trim a bit off, but it does need looking at in more detail.
yeah, okay. Agree future plans for closed churchyard. Viewpoints?
Yeah, well, personally, I mean, we've already talked around the idea of trying to make it as not low maintenance, but as sustainable as possible. We've had that discussion before. So the key things that we need to be thinking about and talking with the church would be, A, with their project with the God's Acre or whatever, if we can work with them and try and formulate something that's more akin to encouraging wildlife, but also being a quiet space, etc. as a whole. It will probably mean that you're splitting it into different sections, but we can look at the bigger picture. But trying to get some form of water butts or IBCs or that sort of thing within the area would be crucial for anything moving forward. So that's something that I think we need to start looking at rather rapidly and where we could site them, because having had the conversation with them, it appears that that wouldn't need to get faculty, but we need to agree positions with them.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing we need to look at.
Yeah.
And then probably not do too much more about the ideas of how we want to plant and what sort of scheme we want to come up with until we've met with the junior church, really, to be
Yeah.
honest, because they'll have ideas.
Yeah.
And if we can tap into that funding, then that's going to be far better than trying to create something that then is going to not gel with what their ideas are.
Steve?
Oh, to be honest with you, I don't know where the closed graveyard area is, to be fair.
All of the churchyard.
It's classed as a
Yeah, it's
closed.
closed,
Right, okay,
yes. So
Yeah.
everything that is in there that we maintain, that's our responsibility to maintain it, but obviously we need to do it in tandem with how they would like the area to be to a point, but it has to be reasonable for our staff to be able to manage within their workload, and also moving forward we've got to think today with the weather as it's changing, we've got to think about how do we make our areas still look nice but without overstretching resources, because it's going to become a bigger problem as we move on, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we have got to rethink a little bit, I think, about how we do it,
Life isn't low maintenance, isn't it? Something as low maintenance as possible.
ideally, but still make it a pleasant place to be.
I mean, the other alternative we've got moving forward is Holby and Balloon were responsible along with us for the whole area previously, to my knowledge, and obviously we've not got that facility anymore. But there's nothing to say that another organisation can't set up something akin to that, not to the size that Holby and Balloon was, because I don't think that's sustainable or manageable. And then there is the potential that you can incorporate that organisation in with any planting requirements. You know, it takes a bit of a load off the parish, but and it also, you know, brings more of the community side into it. So that's a possibility that we could look at later down the line as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. The only concerns I would have around that is that you would need to set out very clearly what the vision is, not down to the point of you can only have blue and you can only not to that point, but if we're going to go down the route of trying to be as sustainable as possible, then we've got to try and avoid anything that's going to need copious amounts of water, because if not, we're just making the job harder for anybody that does it,
Yeah.
whether it's a group or whether it's us or whatever, because it's a lot of work, as you well know. It's very time consuming, isn't it?
Yeah.
So by all means, groups, if there's a group formed, then yes, we can look at incorporating them into the whole maintenance of the area,
Yeah.
but with the caveat that it's got to be done in a way that it's not going to be loads of work for anybody, really.
Yeah.
Because if that folds, with the best will in the world, a group will probably survive, sometimes it only survives 2 years, and then if that suddenly folds and you've got a massive amount of work that somebody has got to pick up, which we've found.
Well, that's what we all know.
Exactly. It causes a lot of problems, doesn't it?
So, from just purely from a maintenance perspective, currently, what do our guys do in the closed churchyard?
Currently,
Is it just cut grass and trim?
yeah, at the moment.
Okay.
That is pretty much it. I mean, obviously, that if they're instructed to do other things like the trees
Yeah.
or whatever, they will do that, but it's not a regular thing that they are weeding or
No.
doing the roses or whatever, but the roses would become part of their schedule for later on in the year to make sure that they are maintained. But it's as to how much time would be available, like to weed, because we spent a whole day weeding just that one section. Is it viable to have your staff doing that a lot? Or do we have to look at how we plan that area to make it less work? Yeah.
The other area you've got in there is obviously the area that was planted up by Paul Foyster,
Yeah.
which
Maybe some work.
initially was a very nice area, but
Yeah.
now it's lost what it was.
Yeah.
But again, is that something that we can or we're going to be directing the guys to do, or is it something that volunteers are going to go in and do?
I personally would like to see it more initially, if we could work that in with one of the days that we're working with church.
Okay.
As one of the first things we start to tackle is try and get that area back into some sort of, so it looks as it should do.
Yeah.
Then it can become something that is added into the schedule, but it needs quite a lot of work to get it back to where it should be.
Yeah.
And that is not logical with the amount of work that staff have got to do currently. If we can get volunteers to do it initially and get it back, then moving forward you can schedule things in. The same with all the borders. Once they're planted and they're done so that it's minimal maintenance, then it's not a big onus on anybody, whether it's staff or volunteers. It's not an onerous task to do it, but it's not there yet.
So, to agree future plans, obviously, the first port of call is to have that meeting with the church, which we planned for
21st of October.
21st of October.
I think, can we go back, if we could work out a date so that we could have our first get together with them to do some work within the churchyard, whether it just be weeding, sorting out that bed, whatever. If we can pencil that in for sort of back end of the summer, and try and kick-start things a little bit. Do you think?
Yeah.
As a first thing?
To have a day.
You mean prior to the 21st?
Yeah, prior to the date when we're meant to be meeting with them.
Well, I'm happy to put something forward, obviously between sometime over August,
Yeah.
to put something, if we can go back to the church and come up with an agreeable date, and then anyone that wants to get involved can come there. At that point, we can potentially also have some volunteer policies there, because if they're saying that we've got to be responsible for that, obviously they're going to need to be on our volunteer list. So, I don't think you're going to get that set up beforehand, but we could set it up on the day, take the details of them on the day. So if you could possibly go back to them and come up with a foreseeable date, if you give them an option to put something forward, any time in August, I'm fine with, but if anybody else has got any other ideas.
Would you want it to be a weekend?
We don't necessarily. I think if you gave them the option of whether they prefer it in the week or a weekend, because obviously Sundays are tricky because they've got, and then Saturday they may have a wedding. So if they could come up with a few alternative dates, we can work with it.
And if we need to agree that at next full council, we can do that before the open spaces. And then the remaining plans we'll leave on
Until we've
the
met
back
with
burner
them.
until we've met them on the 21st. We did mention the water concern when we met with them, so
I think it might be useful if we start, when we're out and about, if we have a little bit of a recce and think where, because you've got to look obviously for your downpipes, etc., and see where we think they could potentially go, and then we can at least have that conversation with them when we have our meeting, and say, well, we've identified this, this and this area, have you got any issue with that?
Yeah.
And then at least we can start the process of working out how we're going to get the water into the area so that we can be sustainable.
I mean, I know they did say initially that the amount of water that comes off that roof
Yeah.
is immense.
Yeah.
However, I know with just normal downpipes, you can have it so that it initially fills it, and then once it's filled, it overflows and it goes into the normal truck channel anyway. So, you know, I don't think that there'd be anything difficult to get that sort of thing set up. So their proposal then to initially go back to them and set something up during August, maybe to do, if we say to do the full Forster area, and then obviously put everything back to the 21st of October for everything else. So proposal. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Point C, to resolve to agree additional ways to make marked grave spaces. Obviously,
Do we need to explain?
you can do, it saves me then going into too much detail.
So back along, it was proposed by Finance Committee to asset tag all the gravestones so that we had a log of numbers against, that we could actually put against our books or online now with the new system. The numbering is appalling. It goes back to the 1990s. Several rows with the same numbers. So the proposal is, again, I think, from finance, is to asset tag. They're only tiny little things. I don't think we can use the ones we've already got. It would have to be a different one. It's just a very small, that would sit at the base of the back of the headstone and would be not really that visible, wouldn't stick out like a sore thumb.
How will you fix it to a gravestone?
We'd have to find that out. We'd have to, the ones like that one, they stick on and they're pretty robust. I don't know. But you get ones for outside, which
Yeah.
I mean, having been and had a look, because obviously Sophie's been working on the map, so we went down there because she was struggling to work out what was where, and there are at least 2, if not 3 rows that are pretty awful.
Yeah.
You really cannot work out what anything is, because the half, well, not less than half of them are actually got the number on the back. And those that have got the number on the back, some of them are correct and some of them are wrong. So you're trying to then work out the system, and the way that they've worked the system is ridiculous, because you've, like John was saying, you've got the same row number and then they've gone into A, double A, triple A, but they've gone so far with it that way, and then what you would, a sensible person would do would be sort of carry on but with double A and then come back on the other side and sort of loop back round, but they've not done that, and they've gone down so far and then they've changed, and then on the other side they've gone back the other way with something else and then come the other way with something else. So it's all a complete and utter mess, and I don't, other than putting some sort of marker on enough of the graves to, so that anybody can work out where a grave is. I don't know how we can do it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we're going to have to do the whole cemetery, because that's just not going to work, but there are key areas that are really bad, that are still being used, and the problem is that if you can't identify the correct row, then you can't then identify the correct place that somebody needs to go, and you've got a problem.
I think we initially spoke about this a couple of months back, about marking rows by putting something like a half brick in the end of the row with that number, that letter on, whatever.
Perfect idea.
And doing that. Obviously, perfect idea if it's laid out correctly in the first place.
Yes.
I think the asset tags are a good idea in the sense of if they will adhere to it, and it's a minimal invasive process. All headstones should now be getting labelled, and there's still some that aren't, so that's added to it. And obviously, best will in the world, we're all trying to ensure that things work swimmingly in that area. Yeah.
I think if we can investigate, even if we just potentially, could we trial one of their existing asset tags that we have got? I know we don't want those, but just see whether it will stick and adhere. Because if it does, that's the quickest and simplest and cheapest option that we've got. Then moving forward, yes, you're going to have to replace them every few years because they are going to start to not adhere after a period of time, but we don't know how long that's going to be yet, do we?
But if you asset tag them and you can tell which row's which, you can then do that more hard fix solution of putting
Exactly.
some more decent ladder in.
And it is the key areas that we need to concentrate on that are tricky. And
and still being used.
yeah, and I mean, I've been down there, I don't know how many times, and you don't really think about it until you actually start looking. But there are so few of them that have actually got a number on them that it is really, really difficult. And of course, the rows don't line up. So if you think you're in B, it's sort of going like that. So then you're not sure whether you're in B or whether you're in A or whether you're in C, and it's all a bit. So it just needs something doing with it, else we're just going to have a real problem. And I think that would be the quickest way, if it will work. That would certainly solve the issue enough that we can start to get the systems sorted. Because once the map's done and you've got enough of them that have got numbers on, then you can then work out where you need to be. But we're in a bit of limbo at the minute.
So initially moving forward then, we'll trial one of the asset tags that we've got to see if it will adhere, and if it's a workable way forward in the interim. If it does, and we can get the plan up to where we need it to be, then we can come up with a more fixed solution once we've got the plan in place and we know exactly what's where.
I think that's a sensible thing.
Okay. Right, the only other. Okay. So proposal is then we'll use the asset tag, get it to a point if it works. If it does, also well and good, and then we'll work on the plan. Okay, and that's who's doing the plan? Karen,
What?
Rick, Sophie.
Sophie, Karen and Rick are working on a plan at the minute. Obviously, it's still a long way to go, but it's working on the areas initially that are being used the most, so that we can get that sorted.
Okay, so a proposal for that? Yeah. Second? Yeah. Agree. Okay, D, to resolve to agree on long-term maintenance at Hallgate Cemetery. Yeah.
I've got that on, Mark, and it sort of crosses over one further down about the Rose area. It was following the email that came in, obviously complaining about the state of the rose bed and the weeds in the driveway. Weeds in the driveway is easy because we can just build that into the work schedule so that they can be sprayed. The rose bed area, because it's not got a lot in it at the minute, it gets weeded up rather rapidly, doesn't it? Having had a conversation with staff, their suggestion is something that I just thought I'd moot. Instead of having it as a bed, seed the whole thing and plant roses into the grass as you get them. So then it would be easier, maintenance-wise, further down the line, because you'd be able to mow between them, potentially, or whatever. I mean, obviously, that will impact on you. But because of the amount of weed that you get down there, because obviously it comes from the fields, doesn't it? And it's constant. You're pretty much going to have to be down there every week while it is like it is to keep them on top of it. Just thought.
I mean, Steve, I'll also hand over to you in relation to mowing in between it and around it, because personally I think that's going to be quite difficult to do and maintain, especially for strimming it. And if you're strimming it, you go up to the side of the rows, you strip through the rows. Yeah. That would be my only concern with that. We've reduced the size of the bed.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's gone from a point of it's cut by contractor, it's not cut by us. And our guys don't necessarily go down there unless they've got an interment, other than bins and such like. So as far as a maintenance perspective, we don't actually maintain it as such. But when it was where it was, and then it's got pulled back to being sort of like flat and a bit of weed in it, I think if you put 1 day a week, 1 day a month tops, half a day a month maybe, if all they've got to do is weed round where the Buxton's hedging is and the rose garden, they can do that in half a day surely.
Well, it's conversation as to
Yeah.
what we want and how we expect. I mean, I personally think it would be a very good thing if our staff went down there on a more regular basis, because they're not going to know about a problem unless they go and visit it.
No.
To be
So,
fair, Tony used to go down there quite a bit.
Yeah.
He used to.
Yeah.
And then the other lad, they used to work with him. I can't remember what his name was. They did used to go down there a fair bit. But
I think
I haven't seen one of your new guys for a long while. Well, never seen him down there.
yeah, I think the issue is that we need to put some sort of expectation.
It's a big area.
Yeah.
It's a big area.
I mean, I'll ask your opinion on this personally. Again, looking at the trees, you guys cut it. For me, it would be a lot more beneficial to go circle about 2 foot around the tree, so that you guys haven't got to go right up to the edge of it. You buzz around the tree like that, you've cut it, it's already been trimmed because there is no grass around there, you can bark around there. We've got plenty of bark that comes in the close season that we could potentially use. And things like that, it's about doing it a bit smarter than what we currently are to make it less manageable. Or
Yeah.
more manageable,
The
sorry.
driveway is bad, but right from the beginning we was told we weren't allowed to spray.
No,
I
sprayed
would
it
be
within the
happy
last
to.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I would have done that, but we was told we never had to spray under no circumstances. We had to spray, so we never did.
I think that the main reason would be it's not technically it's not built into your
Yeah,
contract, is it?
yeah.
But I mean, we have got a member of staff that has got the spraying licence now. So again, we just need to make sure that it's done on a regular basis, and the only way we're going to know how often it needs to be done is by going down there.
Yeah.
So I think it's about when we have the work scheduling, we work out our expectation of how often we would like them to go down,
Yeah.
other than when they have a
Yeah.
food run.
I think the biggest thing you have is throughout all of this, it's more and more on your 2 staff members.
Yeah.
Doing more and more and more. You're going to fail massively. Massively. You know,
Yes.
when next year when you take the basket back, you are going to need a 3rd, maybe 4th person.
Well, that's another conversation which we've got to, that
We've got
really
to,
needs to
yeah.
be next month. We
Yeah.
need to have a conversation
You are
about
seriously
how and
going
what we're going to do.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do.
Can I ask you to declare an pecuniary interest in
Yeah.
this matter? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that with the conversation, I think the most important thing is that we work out how we're going to look after that raised bed. If we're keeping it as is, then that's fine. Then we need to just schedule in how often we think it needs weeding. The spraying, we can say that that needs to go on to the work schedule as and when it needs to be done. And then if they visit the site at least, I would say every fortnight, no less than every fortnight, just to have a look and see what's going on, personally. And then if there's nothing much to do down there when they visit, then at least a bin.
I think it's as much just a visual check. Like, for instance, I think the hose pipe, third one along, not the one near the gate, but the next one in, hasn't got the hose pipe itself is snapped off, so you can't actually fill it from that one either. So it's things like that just the general day-to-day stuff that, you know, people go down there and expect to be there, and it's just, you know, we just need to be aware of it. So if we say then for them to go down once a fortnight, just to have a general look around and sort of like address anything that needs doing. And then that can be built into the work schedule. Obviously the drive has been sprayed now, and so as that dies off, it will be easier to get rid of the stuff that's in the drive anyway. So, but again, I just think it's like the pavers. If it's sort of like sprayed and all you've got is dead on the top of it, it sometimes looks worse than having the green stuff there. But you know, again, I think we're at a point where there were people previously on the council that took a chunk of that on as a volunteer basis that we don't have now. So, you know, we've never really had to have that impetus on it, whereas now I think we do.
How's the driveway looking from the point of view of level? Are we still getting potholes and things in there, or is it not too bad since you did yours?
It's not as bad. Obviously, it still needs a fair few goes around if you're going to get it back to what it was originally, but...
and have we still got the pile of the chippings there? So that's a job that we can schedule in for later on to start to fill where there's issues.
There is a couple of bags, builders' bags of stuff down there. I don't know whether that's gravel or something that was
I think it's ballast.
ballast. Yeah. So, but yeah. So, proposal is to get them to go down. You got that? Yeah. So, proposal for that. Yeah. So with that. Right. 2022 3-42 allotments. A, to receive an update on the waiting list.
Right, so, turn around. So, we've just let the last one at Battlefields, however, which goes into the one further down. The 1B that was formerly, as I said, we can now get 8 plots. So, and we've got 3 plots now from Plank Hook, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we've got enough.
That's 9 to the end of that.
Was that? Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah. So we've got enough to. If people want to take them at those sites, so we shouldn't really have a waiting list. But I don't know what you want to do about the where the rubbish hasn't been cleared away.
There was the initial one that was mentioned at, I think it was the last full council meeting, or the last open spaces meeting, about 2 allotment holders down there that wanted to expand sideways.
Yeah.
So if we've got 8 plots there, 3 at Plank Hook, that gives us 11, and we've got 9 on the waiting list, that potentially gives us 2 free.
Yeah, the only thing is you've offered the rubbish area
to
one side.
Okay.
So you've got, in fact, you could offer 1 more to
Yeah.
somebody, but it's what you want to do about the rubbish that's on there, because you did ask
That's
the
clear.
them to clear it, and they haven't even responded to the letter, so do we
Yeah,
charge?
I think you've got two choices. You're either going to get it cleared and so it's all ready for somebody to go on there, or you're going to have to say if the people are prepared to go on and take it as seen, then for the first year they don't pay, like we have done with other things previously. If they're going to clear the site and they're going to make it good, then for 1 year they don't pay rent. Because it's probably going to be more cost effective than getting somebody in to actually clear it, I don't know.
I
doubt if you'd be able to reclaim any costs back from the previous tenant, they wouldn't pay it. So even if you've got somebody in to clear it, it's going to come out of
Do you
that
sort
budget.
of hold like a deposit?
No, but I think that's something we need to look at doing.
Obviously, the agenda item is just to receive an update in relation to, we don't need to agree anything, but I do think it's quite, it's a good conversation that we're having about the fact of, I think the people that are on the waiting list, if we can offer them, as you say, either reduced rate or, even if it's half price.
Give them the option.
If they don't want to take it, they don't want to take it, But then if none of them want to take it and we've got to clear the site first, then I think that needs to come back for a conversation as to what we're going to do with that.
Yes,
If that's
we'll
okay.
go back next time.
But it'd be sort of nice to know how many are willing to take one of those plots on as
We'll
seen.
get on to contacting everyone.
Thank you. Right, B, to receive an update on Battlesfield allotments. Obviously that's part and parcel of, so.
Yeah,
Is
and
anything else
there was nothing else with regard to the other conversation, is there?
No, it's only an email that's come in.
They were went down to value today.
Yeah.
So then that will have to come back through the system. Once we know what value they've put on it, then we'll agenda it.
I just think we need to be sort of like on the ball a little bit in the sense of if whatever happens with the allotment area, if they come back and they're going to sell it or whatever the case may be, we have to have a certain amount of land and a certain amount of allotments per capita that we have.
We have got a lot of allotments, but you only have to provide them if you've got the finances to provide them.
Right,
So
okay.
you've got a duty to provide allotments.
Yeah.
But if it's beyond, so if they wanted 300,000 or 400,000 for that land, that then puts it outside of that legislation because it's not feasible to provide that
Yeah.
for.
Okay, so basically the ball's in their court in relation to that.
Mhm.
So we'll wait on that conversation to be had. Wonderful, thank you. Point C, to resolve to agree the percentage increase for allotment rents. Obviously I saw the information about the different rental figures for each particular site.
And then did you see Sophie's where she's sent that document through?
Yes. Yeah.
So you could increase everybody's up.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just all over the place, isn't it? On this, look, when you look at the price per acre on some of those, I can't, I've got names on there, so I
Yeah.
can't. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then when you come down to the smaller ones,
Yeah.
I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on it. Well, what you've got to do, you've got to decide now because the letters must go out in August.
So that one there, the top one.
Sorry, I can't see.
The top.
This one?
Yeah, that one there. So Northern's Lane in relation to that one.
Yeah.
That's for in effect 15 plots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one isn't price per acre, it's
No.
not in there. Well, it might be, because that might be an acre of
It's the same
land.
price.
It's an acre of land.
So so 15 plots is an acre.
Yeah, that would be about, I would say that what he's got is an acre roundish, yeah.
Um,
Line
Yeah.
76.
So
Line
Northern
76.
Lane, every single plot is approximately the same size. So the price per acre for each plot is £150. Each plot is one rood, which is approximately a quarter of an acre.
Okay.
So that
Understood the chart.
person has got 15
15
plots,
plots.
which is, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're all the same price per acre.
So it's basically got 3 3/4 acres. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so if you've got to send the letters out by the 1st of September, and that is notifying of rents going up on the 1st of September 2023. You have to give people 12 months' notice.
Isabel?
I just think it would be so much easier. I know obviously some land is slightly better quality than the other, but I can't imagine that there's a huge difference in the areas that we're dealing with. It would be easier moving forward if every site had the same price per acre. I mean, obviously your smaller plots,
Yeah.
your garden allotments is a different entity. You can't really, if you charge that as the price per acre, it would go up astronomically. No, it go down. Okay, so you've got to look how that works. But if you worked out so that at least you were on the same level playing field for whichever site they were going on as a starting point, because they're just ridiculous. They're so different, aren't they?
So,
Even people on the same sort of site are paying slightly different amounts, aren't they?
okay, so we've got the difference, judging by
You can see
what's
them
been.
off if you want.
Yeah, I've got it. Got it here, yeah. So the difference primarily, other than one particular place, you're looking at a difference of 40 quid per acre from the smallest to the, from one to the other, yeah? And that one at the one at 262, is that per acre price, or is that,
Yeah, so that was,
because if that's the case, then what we need to do is we need to bring them all up to a certain level, so that one will have to come down to a certain level.
Yeah.
that's the one that they've just given notice on, so that one can
Yeah.
be changed immediately, because ultimately plot 2 there got split into 2 pieces,
Okay,
approximately the same size, because there's 40 purchased to a rood,
right.
so it's just slightly smaller than the other one. But again, the prices are completely different, so.
So that one is pretty much null and void then. Okay. So if we've got, like I say, we've got a difference of 40 quid per acre price across all sites. Proposal I would put forward is to hit the middle ground and make them all the same. We're not gaining anything, we're not losing anything. It gets them all the same, then we can do percentage increase from that point onwards.
What is it? Because the lowest is 130
120.
and the highest is 160, isn't it?
120.
This one.
No.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
This next
also.
one, no, next one.
Oh, sorry.
120.
Yeah, 120.
The biggest is 160.
Yeah.
And you know, and as we go from the top end and say that's the percentage increase on everybody else, well, now I'm open to suggestions.
I'd go middle.
Then you've got a lot of plots that you'll be achieving less on, and the cost of maintenance and drainage rates and things.
So which ones have the drainage that we have to pay?
Good question.
Because then that then
gives us
adds in.
facility
So
to-
if you
yeah.
if you said, right, it's a
Basic
flat
price.
rate of,
Yeah.
but if you've got drainage, then you add that in.
Yeah.
So then that makes that slightly more expensive.
Sensible solution.
Dock Grove, I think, is the only one we don't pay drainage on.
Right, and everywhere else we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you make it as your flat rate is, say, argument's sake, 150? And then if they got drainage to pay, then it's going to be closer to the highest point for most people, isn't it? On the sites where they're already paying 160, then by the time you've added in the drainage on top, it's going to be similar sort of, because the price for the drainage varies on each site, doesn't it?
Yeah, 'cause it depends on the size of the site.
When was the last time they had a rent increase?
Oh, I don't know, I'm guessing 4, 5, 6 years ago,
I
maybe.
can't ever remember what happened.
Because I mean, you've only got to look at currently, what's inflation? 11%? You know, that's just inflation.
I think you
Yes.
don't want people handing back, do you? They think it's too much.
The prices on here are slightly out of date, but South Holland charge approximately £164, £168 per acre. And they're similar sized plots to us, probably a bit smaller. So other ones are astronomically higher, but they're comparable.
Two of the sites we don't own, we rent,
Mhm.
so we pay rent and then we rent them out.
But I'm presuming currently we're on a break even on those sites at least.
Yeah, I haven't checked.
Okay.
Checked to see what.
I would say you'd be pretty much on break-even.
Yeah, I think you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how about then we go 164, match South Holland District Council's prices. We're not going over and above. It also gives us that percentile increase that we're looking for anyway. And then that, the only other one potentially you could make a little bit cheaper is the Dog Grove one because they don't do
Drainage.
the drainage. Fixed Dog Grove one.
Yeah,
Just
it is.
not drainage.
So then you probably put that to 150.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need to just slightly alter the agenda item, Mark, because I've put as a result to agree the percentage. So
Okay.
it's just to resolve,
Just change the agenda point to
resolve to
agree the increase,
Yeah.
not the percentage increase.
And
So,
proposer for the change.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. And then a proposer for the,
New agenda item to resolve to agree the increase for allotment rents. Proposer. Yeah, second that. Yeah, great.
thank you.
So the proposal is to put Dog Grove at £150 per acre because they don't have drainage expense, and every other allotment 164 per acre. I guess.
Apart from the garden ones.
Sorry?
Apart from the garden ones, because they're significantly more per acre currently.
And the garden allotments are thereabouts, I'm presuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're a flat fee
Right.
per allotment.
Which
Okay.
equates to a lot more per acre because they're a lot smaller size.
In relation that we currently
Yeah.
charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we just do a percentage increase for them and just leave it at that, or do we just leave them as they are to get them all filled? I don't know.
Well, we're talking a year down the line, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think we go 10% increase, personally.
What would that bring it to?
£2.50,
Sorry?
an additional £2.50 a year.
No, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable.
Okay, so Bucklersfield, 10% increase.
Mm-hmm.
Dog Grove, 150 per acre. Everyone else, 164.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll propose it. Steve said it, and is it and it's notified for September 23, yeah?
So we'll do, you know, we'll put all the letters out.
Cool. Wonderful. Thank you. Point D, to resolve to agree the allotment signage. Now, which is following on from your allotment training.
Yeah.
It said that we had to have signage, especially health and safety signage, down at each of our sites. And so it's just really to get that agreed and get it ordered, so is something we need to have, so it's
I
got.
have asked for the prices of signs as requested, and I'm still waiting.
Okay.
Have you just gone to the one person?
Yeah, a minute, so,
Yeah, well, there's another person locally that you could go to.
okay.
I'll be giving them
You-
if you're not going to get anywhere.
It does say, you, in the allotment training, it did say you should put your terms and conditions on rules and regulations on there, but some people said, well, that's a lot, and also you can't change it then without changing the signage. So maybe just the link to our website, or
Yeah.
even a QR code, or they've got on there.
Yeah.
We go straight away through.
Yeah,
I mean,
makes
probably
sense.
QR code would be easier,
Mm.
because then you can update it as and when you want to.
Yeah.
But, you know, most people have got phones and they can scan it, can't they?
Mhm. Or know somebody that will,
Well,
you know. What sort of size signs are we looking at? A2, A1? Is it that big?
What's 2 times A3? Is that A1?
No, A2.
Probably that size. The only one I wouldn't struggle to find somewhere to put it would be Bass, wouldn't it?
yeah.
But
you
there's
just have to
another, yeah, I'll
Just-
tell you about one, I forgot to tell you about Bass.
Yeah, there's another entrance.
Entrance, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, the only thing you could do is just physically get the staff to go down and do that. That's the only thing you can do, isn't it? As long as it's not impacting on the allotments itself, no problem.
Okay. So, yeah, so
We need 6 or 7, 6 and 3 there. 3, 6, yeah.
okay. So if we can agree to spend on the signage, and then as soon as we get a couple of quotes, we can then get to go for the cheapest quote.
So
So
go out for quotes.
I just think it's quite, you know, we've had the train on it. We've been told that we need it.
Yeah.
We need to get it up.
Who's it, please? Okay. And agreed? Okay.
Okay. Harwich Bank, 2022 3-43, to resolve to agree the swing seat replacement price. And I'm presuming this is just the swing seat.
Yeah, yeah, it's not anything else. It doesn't come with chains or anything, I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of money, but
2 flat seats and a toddler cradle seat.
Is that for the total price then?
That's excluding that, yeah. The cheapest one, guy didn't seem, right, and, you know, he wouldn't give me dimensions, he just kept saying standard, standard. So I would have to go back and double, see.
Well, the cheapest one is the company
Mm.
that's taken over from the company that actually installed
So-
them. Oh, no, sorry, no, they were Wicksteed ones.
Mm.
Yes, no, they're different.
No.
So Wicksteed is the company that installed that,
Mm.
but they're not too dissimilar, are they?
I thought that was just for one seat. If it's for all three, then it's not
that
as bad as.
no.
Harwich Bank, is there another swing going in there? There's only 2 swings there.
Oh no, it's to replace the seats that are gone, seats broke. The actual seat bit that you sit
Yeah.
on, the flat bit, that broke.
The Harwich Bank.
Yes.
There's 2 swings. Harwich Bank's on 3.
There should be.
There's definitely 2.
I'll look on the phone, but yeah, there's
Hang on.
There's definitely a flat one and a toddler one.
There's only 2.
So,
There's one. Well, couldn't it be? I'm sure I've only ever seen 2.
have a look
I
at
think
the
they
last
probably
one.
removed one, but the chains would still.
Yeah, there's 2. There's 2. 1
Hang on,
So
I'm
it's not
rolling,
seats,
I'm
the seat
rolling
damage.
through. So, what have we got there? there's 2 flat seats and a cradle. It's a 2 bay attached to a 1 bay. Yeah.
It's probably because if they have removed the chains and the
Mm.
seat on one, because
Yeah.
I think they did, if I remember right. I can't remember now. It's a long while ago.
So yeah, we need to
So
replace them. So
I would suggest that if you can't get a sensible solution from the cheapest, with, so you're sure of the dimensions, just go straight back to Wicksteed, because you know that they'll fit then.
it's the difference of 60 quid. So, yeah. So the proposal is that we go for the cheapest until, unless they can't come back with a reasonable figure, and then we get it from Wicksteed. So is well proposed.
Yeah.
Second. Okay. 2022 3-44 Nature Reserve. To receive an update on the Nature Reserve working party. There's no update. There's been no meetings, so I will try and get an update for full council. (2022) 3-45 work scheduling. A, to discuss and resolve to agree a programme for plate equipment maintenance. I think we've had 2 pieces of equipment now that we've got issues with, or had issues with. Obviously, looking at the park equipment inspection that we have yearly, I think we need to be quite conscious of what's in the initial one, 2019 one, under 22 one, because there's a lot in there that is a crossover and is still there and still an issue. So I think we need to just make sure that we're getting those things resolved in a timely manner. What's the process in relation to? Because we have visual checks by the guys. Do we have a sign-off sheet?
Yeah, they bring the sheets in the file in the office.
Okay. Obviously, the tool for the roundabout has been ordered. We've already spoken about that one. So I just think it's quite key that is getting sorted as per the inspection. Anyone else's views?
Yeah, I mean, the priorities are the ones that are in the amber, basically. They're the ones that need to be sorted out. So roundabout is one of those. And obviously the slide was one of those, but that's going to be resolved because that's gone. And then I think the only other amber was the one that's now been damaged, I think, if I remember right. The others, they all need doing, so like the repainting and building up the surfacing and like all the grass mat, it all needs to be lifted and redone.
Yeah, restarted.
But it's not the time of year to do
No.
it because the ground's so compacted that you're not going to be able to do anything sensible with it. But yes, it does need doing. And all of the springers, they all need a bit of TLC, but they're the ones that have been there donkey's years. So this most sensible thing to do with those is to remove them one by one, take them into the workshop, redo them, repaint them, and then put them back in situ. That's the most sensible thing to do. And then obviously keeping a check on the shackles and the chains and things like that, but none of them were at the point of needing to be replaced when the inspection was done, but it's something that needs to be done routinely to make sure that the priority has got to be the roundabout.
Yeah.
But I do think the only way you're going to solve it is you're going to have to resite it,
Yeah.
to be fair, because it's been an ongoing issue ever since it was put in.
Yeah.
So it needs to be recited, so we've got to think about where it can go in the long term.
I think another key thing in relation to the piece of equipment that's broke in the park was, it did state in there about making sure we do an assessment, because the inspection can't do assessments above 2.5 metres. So that particular thing is above that site.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that we're ticking all the boxes that we need to tick. If any sort of further inspections need doing. So if we can, obviously we'll come into the work schedule in a bit. If we can put onto the work schedule in that anything that is amber goes into the red area and gets dealt with, and then everything else we can do as and when we come to it. Obviously, I am conscious as well. There is only 2 of them, and it is a very busy time. So I'll propose that anything that is on the amber list in that is dealt with, and then we'll devise a way forward with the guys to deal with the remaining repairs needed. Second that. So well, all agreed. Okay, B, to resolve to agree to remove the reefs from the War Memorial.
So this is the Royal British Legion. The poppy wreaths are still up in the War Memorial. And they want us to make sure the hooks don't get moved. Apparently it's been done in past years.
Well, it's easy enough to remove them, that's not a problem.
Yeah, get it done.
So, if it's of assistance, I can do that when I'm going around the water. So I don't need anybody to do that. I'm happy to do that. And I'll make sure that the hooks are left.
Or if you bring the hooks back here, restore them back here,
Yeah.
then they can get the hooks because
Yeah.
they're our hooks.
Yeah, no problem, I'll do that. I think the reason they've not been removed is the nature of, if somebody's put a reef there, you don't feel like but yeah, we'll get that done. C, to resolve to agree a way forward with the rose garden at Holgate. Obviously we've spoken about this, and to add to the work schedule, so if we can add that, go down there once a fortnight. Just an overview, look round. So I was proposing that we go down once a fortnight. Yeah, all agreed. D, to resolve to agree the jobs the lad did in relation to the ASB.
His mother wanted us to come up with some jobs.
What can he actually do though, at his age? What can you ensure if anything happened? Do you know if he's on your site and anything
Yeah.
happened?
I
Is it
think it's
more,
going to be a difficult
is
one.
it more hassle than it's actually worth? If he was doing something for you, slipped, tripped, fell over something, broke his leg, should he even be working?
She suggested litter picking, but he would have to be supervised and then
Picked
he's
a
got
glass
to have...
bottle, cuts himself, you end up being sued, wouldn't you?
Can I suggest the date that we're going to agree with the church to do the churchyard? He can sign the volunteer policy, or we can send the policy to his mum if he's under 16, and then he'll be supervised.
Because it's not, litter picking, it's not going to work because our litter picker is out and about very early in the morning and he's not going to want to be supervising somebody. And quite frankly, our staff haven't got time. So, I mean, unless there is a job that we can think of that he can do where one of us as a councillor is supervising him, but again, you've got the issue that you've got to make sure that you're covering everything in case there's an incident. But yeah, I mean, that would be a solution if he could come and help on that day. Just do some general, he could litter pick within the churchyard even, couldn't he? He could do general weeding or whatever. Nothing too taxing.
So in relation to that, what's the plan from your perspective? Going back to mum and discussing it with
Yeah,
mum, is that what?
I would go back once Richard discussed.
So yeah, if you just go back to mum and say that we're aiming to have a volunteer day on that particular day. If mum does want him to have something that's a bit more, one-to-one, again, through the summer months, I'm more than happy to have a day when he can go around asking to come to the different areas around town. And just basically showing what we do and what our remit is and how it makes an impact. Also a proposer for that, for Jan to go back to on. Yeah, Steve. Isabel second, I agree. Point E, to resolve to agree the work schedule.
So I didn't put the full one on there because I have to edit it all the time, so it's, so I've got on the reg, grass cutting, closed sand pit, closed the sand pit. So I've got clean tennis courts on amber. I've got on green, play equipment general cleaning, slide Carter's Park, which can come out, nature reserve general tidy up, Cedar Park Road, which they have been doing in between other things. Prune Roses, Carter's Park, can I take that off now? Trees and Holbeach St John's War Memorial. So we've only got grass cutting on red.
If we put in the amber.
Amber list, play equipment.
And the trees
tree
in the
that's
churchyard. Well, yeah, in the
trees in
churchyard.
the churchyard, and potentially maybe into the amber, the tree adjoining Holbeach.
Surgery.
Yeah, that was surgery. Park Road surgery.
And what else was it? Oh yeah, the visit, fortnightly visits.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah, put that in amber so it becomes a bit more required.
amber.
Yeah, because then they can, it will be something that they'll think about doing rather than being, we can always move it down to green once the routine's set.
Okay, and the hose, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was be red or amber?
Yeah, if they can just replace the hose on it, yeah, probably red on that one, but that can be the first time they're going down there, so not an issue.
Well, they are going back. They marked where they marked out the allotment. They've sprayed it, but they're going to go back and put little bits of wood there, so it's easier to be seen. So on red we've got grass cutting, amber list play equipment, tree in churchyard, replace hose hall gates. In amber, clean tennis courts, tree Holbeach surgery, fortnightly visits to hall gates. And on green, play equipment general cleaning, nature reserve general tidy up, Cedar Park Road and bird boxes, trees in general later on, and then hedge at Holbeach St John's War Memorial.
Did you say you got trees in the churchyard on the road?
Tree, the
Tree,
one,
yeah.
the big one, yeah, so about health and safety one.
Just as part, of course, in relation to grass cutting, because obviously it's a big job. Yeah, it's just one headline. How long does it actually take them to cut the grass in relation to Park Road
I
and
did
the Cars
ask
Park?
them this and they said a couple of days and there was lots of ifs, buts.
I can give you a rough
So,
sort of time. We've done it for 2 months and 3 months. The cemetery was about a day and a half. And that was with 2 people for the first day and someone on their own. Cars Park is about 4 hours, 5 hours.
So primarily for 2 people, 2 days.
Mm.
And then you've got the churchyard.
The churchyard, yeah, another couple of hours, 2 people. Doesn't take long if they're both working.
So 2 days a week should do it.
2 straight 3 days.
What, yeah, what you've got, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Just gives us a ballpark figure in
at the
relation
minute,
to...
obviously, it won't take as long because it's not really growing,
Yeah.
you know, but
The other thing I was going to put up on the work scheduling, are they putting grills on the front of the toilets? Because
Not at the, well, it was, their priority was more to get them open, but they are prepared to put them on if we want them
Okay.
now or later on or whatever you want to do.
Should we put them on the work schedule?
Well, they've got the gates there.
I mean, if it's just a matter of putting them on,
Yeah.
then it saves somebody kicking the doors in as opposed to trying to get in, you know. The only other thing I was going to suggest is obviously in relation to the electrical conduit that's there,
Yeah.
it's just the pipe work. Is it worth just slicing that off and getting rid of the surplus?
Need to know
Or
where
is
it's
it,
going to
is,
fit in.
is it still going?
Don't know. I mean, there's quite a lot of it.
Mm.
I would certainly cut off some of it, I would have thought, because there's a lot.
Yeah, I was just thinking, especially if we're going to be opening the toilets up,
They're already open.
then, you know, I think we need to just make it a bit more, less health and safety than what it currently is. So,
I mean, the tennis courts, they don't necessarily need a clean at the moment, but just monitor them really, if there's any mess on there. Because certainly when the kids get off, and because they're using them quite a lot, if there's any tire marks or gum or whatever that needs doing. So that's sort of it's not a major clean, but it's keep an eye on it really.
in that ducting, before I cut it off, if there is a drawer wire in there, just have to be careful not to cut it off.
there's not.
No, there was. No, there wasn't. Because that's
It's
what.
not.
No, that's what Glenn thought was odd when he put it in.
It has, it's butted up with a big piece of ducting around the outside of it, so literally it should just
Yeah.
hopefully push straight through, all being well.
Okay.
But yeah, there's no drawstring on it. Well, all happy with the work scheduling? Yeah, so I'll propose that. Second as well, Stephen Bates. Right, 2022-3-46 police report. Okay, to discuss and resolve to agree the recommendations of the police report. Right, sorry, yes, sorry.
Well, I mean, there was an awful lot in there. A lot of it wasn't actually accurate, I didn't feel, but there you go. I mean, in general, we're already agreed that we're going to be cutting back areas and whatever, that's part of the schedule of works that's going to be carrying on, keeping so it's more open. Other than that, you've got anti-climb paint if you're going to go down that route, or you've got to look at putting stuff on the top in the rollers. Those are your only main things that you're going to really be looking to do. I would have thought a lot of the other things that they were suggesting not really going to have a huge impact, I don't think. So it's really, are you looking to do your anti-climb paint, or are we just going to see how it pans out through the summer?
I think one of the key things that was raised was the tractor shed.
Yeah.
We can get on top of that. So whether it's worth anti-climb painting that, I don't know. I don't know what the...
Yeah, I mean, we need to, it's not safe if they get up there, so you're either going to do anti-climb paint. I mean, if you do anti-climb paint, they're still going to get on top of it, aren't they? So is it better to look into the price of the roller system so they can't physically get on there?
Yeah.
Because that's the issue, once they get on the top, if the roof collapses,
Yeah.
they're going to injure themselves. So anti-climb paint's not going to stop them.
No. And the only other area, realistically, I think that's a big risk is the bowls club
Yeah.
when they get up there. Steve?
I think they've done recently, I think.
Are you going down the route of CCTV on there?
I think that's PR and IT, so.
Yeah.
It's being looked at the minute, isn't it? So, which is the only solution you're going to get to an extent, but it still won't take a lot of notice.
Mm.
Ultimately, it's looking at trying to make areas as secure as possible. I mean, I don't know what the cost implications are of the roller systems. I have no clue. But I think it would be worth looking at that, because then you can put them in key areas. Presumably you could, if you get some, you could move them around, presumably, I don't know.
It's worth looking into getting a price on it. We can certainly do that. If we look initially at the tractor shed and see what the costings would be for that, and then we can plan that out in different areas. And then obviously CCTV. Any update from PR and IT?
We've got 3 people came out to do quotes, and we're just waiting for the quotes to come back in, and then we'll review them and get a specification done and kind of final prices.
So if we can then just propose for going out and getting quotes for the roller system and seeing what that would cost the tractor shed as well. 2 seconds. I agree. Wonderful. Almost there. 2022 3-47 projects. 8 discuss projects for 23-24.
10,000 projects for this year in the budget. However, the bearer of bad news. You've got to allow for a chunk of that to be moved, which will have to be moved because of the increase in fuel, the mowers, etc. We've spent the budget already, and also you've got electric to a lot of sites, which is going up silly. And also, if you're going to have CCTV in the park, the money will have to come from somewhere, and so it has to be pulled between different committees.
Okay. I thought in relation to the CCTV, was there not something that impacts on the funding of that, that's like free CCTV for an area? Is that not what?
The police have offered us a week.
Oh, a week for it. Oh, okay. Okay. Isabel?
I mean, we just need to think about the priorities of what you're actually wanting to achieve, whether it be this year or next year, really, don't we? I mean, we need to sort out what we're going to do with that sampling area, whether we're going to fill it and put another piece of equipment, or whether we're going to try and reopen it, whatever. So that really needs to be a project that's earmarked, whether it be a trampoline or whatever we decide to do with it. And then your only other thing is you need to look at what you do around your tennis net idea, whether it does go on that hard stamping, or whether we look at, we discussed previously, I don't know whether it's before you arrived or not, but we did look at whether we could do some form of temporary netting on the cricket pitch area, so that it could be utilised through the summer, so you could play volleyball, badminton, whatever, in that area. It wouldn't be horrendously expensive, that could be done fairly cheaply. Because you could put it up, take it down, all they'd need to do is just literally roll it up when they want to cut the grass and then put it out again. I think we need to seriously look at trying to develop the youth area a little bit, whether it's an outdoor table football thing, or better seating, or whatever, just so that we can try and enhance that area. And then you who's the other areas? What do you do with your other areas? I mean, that's just literally part of part.
Yeah.
there are other
I mean, you know,
places to think about.
I mean, one of the other things that does come up is, you know, the surrounding villages, you know, the proportion is, you know, we don't want to solely be spending town centre, it needs to be, you know.
Holbeach Herne could do with ramping up a little bit. The old play equipment is lethal, really. It's quite dangerous. I don't know if you've been down there lately. It's all the wooden climbing frames and it's all falling apart. Some of it's been taken away because it was dangerous, but the actual frame is still there, which is getting worse and worse. Every week we're taking chunks away and things like that.
The problem being that that's not our area as
No.
such. We maintain it. No, we maintain it,
I
but
was going to say it's not on our. We don't get an inspection report for the
No.
equipment we have.
But if the group that actually owns it wanted to look into doing some sort of project there, then there's no reason why we as a council can't feed into that.
Or at least take it all down.
Yeah.
And took the bits, you know, you swing across away and left the frame up, which in my eyes should have just taken down. Leave us an empty field rather than sort of thing.
Obviously, if we've got a budget currently of 10,000 for projects this year, conscious of other funding aspects that are going to come out of that, so I think you straight away cut it in half. You know, £5 gives you surplus, but also £5 you can potentially go for. It's not going to be a fixed net like we was looking for the tarmac area. However, it still serves the same purpose for a lower cost. If you wanted to trial that, is it worth the barriers that we have for the road closure? Is it worth? Are they able to be filled up so that we can trial something like that? Because if you go that route, you're looking at about 700 quid instead of a £5 net. 700 quid. It's removable if we want it to be removable. I know kids can potentially drain it and move it, but you know, is it worth trialing it? I don't know.
Do they belong to us? I don't know if they do. I think they're alone, aren't
Technically, they belong to RBL
Okay.
for the purpose of the road closures, but I think when the whole issue with RBL not being able to organise the parade happened, they needed to not have the equipment, but I think we'd have to double check as to whether it actually belongs to us or whether it's just purely on
they? I think it's loaned to us by the police because they sent through that email, do you remember? With all the things we would need, and it said we already had, and then it listed all the road ahead
Right,
flow signs and barriers.
Yeah.
I'd have to find it out to double check.
So that's maybe not something we could do, but
Okay.
maybe we could look at finding some form of temporary net that could be
I mean, yeah. I mean, even if we do it on that area or we do it
wherever.
on the grass area, you know, it's meeting the criteria of trying it. If it works, it saves any damage in the tennis side. We can utilise that. So that's a potential that we could put forward. In relation to the sand pit, if you think in that area, and I know it was initially sort of either inclusive trampoline or regen the sand pit, I have seen a couple of examples where they've got a sand pit similar size, and what they've done is they've got two boards that basically fold over like doors. So at night they fold it over and put a padlock on it, and then in the daytime they fold it back out again, and it just sits as like they sit on the side of it, and you know. So something like that could be quite a straightforward and relatively cheap infrastructure fix. Then you've just got the cost of the sand. So,
I mean, if we can start getting some forms of costings together for these ideas, then if once the real costs of everything kick in and we know where we're going to be towards the end of the year or whatever, then there is no reason why we can't purchase something late on in the year, if we've still got the budget there from this, but then if not, we're ready to put it into the budget for next year, aren't we? So we can start looking at key things, and I mean, it's definitely the sandpit area needs sorting out. Definitely you need to think about your youth area, you've got to do something with it, because whether that be a net, whether it be, you know, more seating for them,
Well,
we need to think about how we,
we've got plenty.
accommodating
We've
them.
got plenty of benches. The only thing we need to do is just, you know, refurb the tops. So whether that a proportion of that cost comes out of there to wet timbers to be able to refurb it, or to
Or
do
comes out.
pellets.
it could also come out of the budget that we'd already put in for benches, couldn't it not?
Yeah.
So we've got, so
Yeah.
we could get that sorted.
Yeah. So maybe it's worth looking to do that relatively swiftly
Yeah,
if we've got the budget there to do it.
yeah. And then it's whether you've got any big projects that you want to look at. But-
Skate park.
Well, yeah, but we personally haven't got
No,
an
we haven't got
area
anywhere
to
to
put
do
it.
I know.
And then that's the difficulty, so then
Yeah.
we can't fund it ourselves because, but we can support a group that wishes to look for an area to do it.
Yeah.
There are no real big projects at the minute that we really need to look at. But there's lots of little projects that would enhance the areas.
Is there anything out Holbury St John's that's needed in that sense? Because we don't actually have any playing field areas out that way, do we? So is there anything else like in the surrounding areas that we could look to infill? Like you said about Holbury Churn, is it worth approaching the people that own that and then speaking to them about to see if they want to?
I think it would be worth having a discussion with them and just seeing how we can support, how we can help.
Yeah.
Because Holbury Marks are, Holbury Marks, yeah, they've got
They've got a lot.
quite a lot there.
Yeah, but again, that was all done through their own committee. But it just proves that it can be done.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we're needed in a more of a supporting role, or we can give them an initial hot
Boost to do
to
it.
boost
I've got
to
even
do.
around the back of him, a tennis court with no nets
Well,
or
We
that's
did,
been sort of,
that is one thing that we did. We did offer them the old basketball hoop that is still sitting down at Netherfield,
yeah.
and they were meant to be coming to pick it up, and it's never been picked up. So we do need to revisit that because they wanted it, and then they could have put it on the hard standing or near the hard standing, so at least it could be used.
Yeah.
But they never come to pick it up.
Can we get in contact with Holbury Churn, whoever's in charge
It
of
was
that?
Rachel,
And Rachel did, but I mean, Holbury Churn, the church and the playing field are all sort of intertwined, so the best person to go through would be Jenny Worth. She would know exactly who and
Yeah.
what is controlling what areas.
Yeah, if we can contact them and again see if there's anything, you know, maybe raise the concern over the play equipment that's there. And then if they want to put something forward, then we can consider that as a project for, you know, that ward. Right, 22.3.47, B, to discuss projects for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund.
So it depends on what you, any ideas you've got really. There's certain criteria, doing communities in place, kind of improving connections, etc., socialising, those sort of things. You've got trying to improve job skills, training, that side of things, and then what was the other one? It's more like the businesses side. So I would say generally as a council would come into kind of the communities in place element. You can try and support local groups and people as well, improve well-being and training, that sort of thing. But it's just whether you've got any ideas that would kind of fit the bill, I suppose.
Oh, I don't know if we could do it or not, but I know Longson got that men's club, haven't they?
Men's Shed.
Yeah, men's shed, that's it. Is there something we could do that in Holwich for retired people and things like that. That's something to do for the community, isn't it?
I mean, I know a guy who's he's actually down where the men's shed is. He's got like a massive slot car track, scale electric track. He rents off one of the greenhouses down there, but he's having to move out because the tenancies come up. And he was looking to put the track somewhere and potentially run as a community, you know, use of the community as well as doing what he was doing.
Haven't got a building that we could use.
You can purchase a building under the funding as well if you've got community use for it. Again, it's what buildings are available, what work they need doing, etc. And it's how much of the funding you would be able to use towards that.
I mean, again, different committee, but we still don't know what Bowls Club are wanting to do with their lease. Now, if they don't wish to renew,
That'd be an ideal place.
then you've got something sitting right in the middle of the park that could become a little bit more of a men's shed type, you know, community hub maybe, I don't know. But, I mean, we don't know yet. We will know fairly shortly, but
Yeah.
we need to utilise what we've got, if we've got anything.
Could we use some of the funding to renovate properties? I don't know if you know, does it? Hawkins Bungalow, things like that?
Potentially,
Yeah.
if it were a community,
Yeah.
if you were
So,
offering
for
something.
example, the Bowls Club.
Yeah.
If you were if you've got a use for it but it needed work doing to it in order to bring it up to standard, then you could use some of the money for that. I
All
think,
the open spaces around it, you could use it for
yeah.
clubs like that would be
Just
ideal.
It just depends on where that falls in relation to being the charity
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
the
exactly,
council.
yeah.
And a little bit of an overrun
I
there.
think generally,
Over-
yes, I mean,
over.
you can purchase properties, do worked properties, but then they would want some form of funding going into the actual group to kind of support community groups, etc. Obviously, giving them a place rent-free or whatever would also be supporting them. But yeah, it's just thinking about ticking as many of the things as possible. So
I mean, is there something we could look at from a mental well-being, cost of living crisis current thing that we've got going on that ticks the boxes? You know, obviously we've got the community larder, I know is in Holbeach. So I'm not thinking, sort of like them directly, but is there something that we could, have we got a room here that we could potentially utilise for?
I mean, the shared space that we have there for CAB and whatever, it's only a small room. You could utilise it as a hub for another group or whatever, but it's not quite big enough for. I mean, there is a group that I think it would work for, maybe, but we need to be having conversations with them through Holbeach United Charities as well, because it's something that could develop into something a lot more. But
I know there was another parish council who were on the Teams chat with us that were looking at doing their tennis courts. Obviously, we've just done the tennis courts, but any project that you could look at doing a project within Carter's Park or one of the areas, use a facility for people to use for free, because obviously renting rooms out and stuff, we have got rooms available, so it's kind of what's the funding being used for.
Could we look at doing the linking in? Obviously, we speak to Jenny Worth. Could we link in with doing their tennis court at Holbeach?
or even doing some form of, you could do some form of sport or better play area or whatever. I mean, that is something that you could get the funding for potentially, because it's isolated and you're
At
tapping into
least,
something
I
like
mean, you could potentially say you've got Holbeach Bank and you've got the pavilion down there, which I know a lot of that comes under the football club, and also it doesn't belong to, it's not our land, so in that sense, whereas Holbeach I believe is owned by the facility around it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is,
It's
yeah.
not like a Crown owned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Could you not do something better down Netherfields? Got a whopping great big field there, that's not actually being used for anything, really.
Yeah, right now.
There's nothing happens there, is
I think
there?
that's something you could really
That
look
is
to
a
develop a
huge
lot
field.
more.
Skate park. Not being funny, slap bang in the centre of it.
Yeah, I don't know how well that would go down with residents around it.
There'd be no issues where the current flat standing is,
No.
hard standing is to develop that
Yeah,
into
'cause-
a skate area.
Car park's actually locked off, isn't it? So people can't park it.
Oh, I'm not saying that, you know,
But
but
that is one place where you've got a lot of space.
Mhm.
You could really do something down there.
Got a lot of opportunity. I think.
Yeah.
I think you'd have a lot of people that would get, you know, behind the fact of a skate
Mm.
park because they've been pushing it for such a long time. It is an open space. It is an open space we own.
And it's huge.
I mean, in terms of, if you want a really good concrete skate park, you're looking at probably 2 inch ground. So,
Really?
Yeah.
yeah, for a concrete one, you have got other alternatives that we did look at that, you know, we could provide in Carter's Park, similar to the ones they got down at Holbeach, St Mark's, because that just sits on top of the surface, that's fine. We can do that in Carter's Park even.
Yeah.
But it's when you're doing the concrete stuff, because you've got to excavate down, that can be done in Netherfield, but then the costs really go up quite a lot.
And,
So-
and when the people that were asking for skate parks, when they were offered the opportunity of having the others,
Mhm.
they didn't want that. They didn't want the modular stuff. They wanted the proper.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, they've got a spoken.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't have to be a skate park, does it? There can be loads of different things
Oh,
down that
yeah.
little field.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big field, that seems to be sort of wasted to me.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at installing a proper multi-sports area down there, so that instead of having the whole football pitch, you kind of start sectioning it off, but actually provide a decent facility rather than just grass. But yeah.
Lots of things to think about.
Yeah.
And not a lot of time for getting your costings together. That's the problem.
No, I mean, in terms of costings, they were, the guy that we spoke to, he's sort of been drafted in on behalf of South Holland to sort of manage and give advice. He suggested it'd probably be September, October time when bids are available. Now, one thing to bear in mind is they have to put an investment plan together. They should be agreeing that hopefully around August time. And then once that's submitted, they can get funding. But realistically, the ideas that we go for need to be sort of in line with the investment plan. They'll identify key areas of, you know, problems and stuff in the area that they want to tackle. So that would be a bit more of a guide of which ones are probably more likely to get funded and which ones not. Bids will probably close around the Christmas time mark. So.
Is it worth communicating with Ashwoods in relation to their development and trying to get a bit of joint funding from them as well, and putting if you reckon it's going to cost about 200k, putting that forward, because we've got a community area that's potentially going to come up. I know that's planning as opposed to what.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, building all these houses, kids need somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And as well, you'd also got the use of the building there that they were wanting our input.
Yeah.
Well, again, your idea of a men's shed or your idea of the scale electric type thing, I mean, the facility would be there.
Yeah.
It's just getting on board with making it happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you can approach various places and see what funding would be available for developing Netherfield, I think that would be a useful area.
Would you be okay with doing that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
and
got-
then we know whether we potentially would be, you know, okay funding wise.
got plenty of access and things like that, hasn't it? Got the gates there ready for, you know, if you're a skate park and there's an emergency, gates there, it's not like they couldn't get to.
Yeah, and you can look at putting proper screening in place, etc. for
Yeah.
people
Makes
around.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Right, so
Before you move on to what I missed something off the work schedule.
okay.
The installation of the,
Oh, the swing.
Inclusive swing, yeah.
so if
I think that they're wanting to try and get the slides sorted because they didn't want to disrupt any more areas. But it's something that they can do when the weather's not quite right for them to do other stuff. So probably put it in amber
Okay.
and they can
Yep.
play around with. We've talked around the area. I don't know whether you came down originally when we were looking at where the trim trail is.
Yeah.
There. You've got the little path that goes down side, it's not brilliant, but you've got a bit of a path, and there's two like privet hedge bushes there that are neither use nor ornament.
Mhm.
So they're going to take those out and then angle it so it's still facing towards the play area, so
Yeah.
that it's not on its own.
Mhm. Yeah. no
So
problem.
where do you want that red
In
amber?
amber.
In amber.
Yeah. Then they can get to it when they've got facility to.
Sorry about that.
No, it's no problem.
I remember doing that. Thank you.
Right, so 222, 3-48, confirmation of date and venue of next open spaces meeting. If it helps, I can do daytime during August. You can make it as early as you like.
It's week beginning the 15th, isn't it? It's 4 weeks.
Yeah. So whenever. Steve, when suits you?
Whenever, really, as long as I get a bit of notice and then perform, yeah, could do during the day.
Monday the 15th, 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Work scheduling with penciled in for tomorrow to do that, but obviously the next one you'll be off,
Yeah.
so we'll make sure that it's a time that you can do.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's fine. Cool. Okay, meeting closed at 6:35.
36.
36. Wonderful. Thank you.